Yeah, I think I like this format. So, okay, here we go. Now, this is the like royal bloodline stuff. Bernard de Clairvaux, or Bernard of Clairvaux, Bernard de Clairvaux in French, but he's French. And like he was the like Saint Robert started the Cistercian order of monks, and then he got transferred. Like once he got these, like he fought for this for a long time to come up with a order, a monastery order that actually followed its vows. They weren't a bunch of homos or women, they weren't running around having sex. They weren't, partying and, like all the other monks. Because it's like, the royal families, people lower down than the royal. Well, I mean, below the prince, you have royals would join monasteries because it was the cool thing to do, and then when they did, all their rich families would give them all give the order a lot of money, and they'd all get all corrupt and everything. So it was just it was the party thing to do, and they drank wine. I mean, they cavorted and everything, and so it was the thing to do. But then here comes Saint Robert and says, well, hey Pope, dude, man, I want to make one where everybody's actually doing what they're going to follow their vows. And it took him a while to get it right, and he finally gets it right. And they transfer him somewhere else, and they bring in Saint Bernard. And Saint Bernard he takes all these men that are actually following it, so they're focused. They're like into this religion, but it's more than that. They're living a monastic lifestyle, which is like, the scribes. They do the writing of all the books because they didn't have printing presses and stuff, and so they were educated, and they had libraries, and they and they grew all their own food, and they built themselves their chapels, or bigger, and they were, they were like, they knew architecture, they knew stuff, and they did stuff. And these were the ones who did that, but they didn't party either. They were just really focused. So Saint Bernard gets in there and turns them into this like Elon Musk or something, into an industry of innovators and inventors, and they came up with like the cathedral designs, what led to the Renaissance, like a lot of the innovations of the Renaissance came from the Cistercian order and Knights Templar. See right here, because Saint Bernard also founded Knights Templar. Okay, so like he was the one who wrote the charter for the original 9 knights, who were his relatives, people from his hometown, so he wrote the charter for them to guard the pilgrim, the paths of the pilgrims from Europe into the Holy Land, because they're like going down there to protect the Holy Land from Muslims, the Crusades, and he got all these pilgrims wanting to go there and because that's another thing, that was like another thing to do, like they want to make a big deal of themselves and go down to the Holy Land, and so the Knights Templar were like the guys that protected they protected the routes that people traveled on from bandits and Muslims and whoever, you know. And so they became the first military branch of the Vatican. And then the way that they one of the well a primary way they protected the pilgrims was like, okay, I mean, these are people with money, you know, who can afford to like travel, but they don't want to take a big chest of gold with them and jewels and silver and whatever, because they're gonna get mugged and killed anyway, you know, or and so wherever they left from, whatever city royal court they come from or whatever, they would they give all their gold, jewels, and silver to the Knights Templar. And the Templars would write them a piece of paper that says, this guy gave us X amount of gold, silver, and jewels. You know, and so then they'd go, they'd travel for a couple of days and on the little bit of gold they brought with them, and you know, they traveled on the supplies they brought with them until they run out, and then they'll pull into a little Knights Templar bank station type of station and say, pull out their piece of paper and say, you know, give me X amount of currency to buy some stuff, some food and whatnot, you know, and go out and party, have a, you know, get drunk, go out and get some prostitutes, whatever, right? And then they would get a receipt that says, okay, now you know, they'd subtract it from their initial and, you know, money they gave them and stuff, and this became the first banking system, you know, because then, see, what happened was the Templars realized that at any given time, see, what they started doing was they would give you a voucher that was trusted as currency instead of gold, or they'd give you gold, whatever you wanted. It was just like today, fiat currency, instead of gold, instead of precious metals. And so, and then they realized, well, they got these huge amounts of gold that you know, because everybody's like, it's easier to carry paper, you know, and leave your gold in there. And so they got more gold than they're ever going to need to give back to people. And so they start lending it out with interest to to kings, and you know, and you know, industry people, you know, people in business and stuff, traders and whatnot. They lend it out, so they now they're making like, this is the origin of the same. It's the same banking system we have today. When you hear the Knights Templar were rounded up on Friday the 13th in 1307, I think, and they were put down, it's like, well, yeah, the leaderships, a lot of them did get, you know, beheaded and whatnot, but their treasure, their gold, and their bookkeepers, and a lot of what they had going on all over Europe, other than in France where, you know, they were hunting them, that all remained intact. And they went, what was left of them went underground, and they resurfaced later as Freemasons and stuff. But they maintain, it's the same banking system we have today. And well, the whole point is, and I'll probably pick it up where, but I want to make sure I make the point here before I hit that 10-minute or that 9:45 mark, which is, see, Clairvaux is where he built his first monastery. And that's why he's called Bernard de Clairvaux. But before then, he was known as Bernard de Fontaine. And the first 9 Knights of Templar were his relatives. And that's my last name, Fontaine. And this is where my whole royal lineage comes from.